Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Fantastic Fermentations YouTube channel, your home for all things homebrew. I am your host Ricky, and today we're going to be diving into an often ignored beer style, the California Common. So hang tight and we're going to dive into this beer. Alright, so before we get going, just take 1 second and go down and hit that subscribe button and also ring that bell. That will make sure that anytime we post a video, any content that we put out, you'll be notified that it's up. And also, if you like California Common, or if you've never heard of California Common, go ahead, hit that like button on this video. Let us know that you're watching, and also drop down in the comments. Tell us what beer you want us to do next. We're open for suggestions. Okay, so what is a California Common? Well, a California Common is described as a malty but dry beer with a characteristic or notes of toast, grain, and caramel in both the flavor and the aroma. It has a firm but not over assertive hop bitterness, more so of a balanced bitterness when you talk about the hops, but it does have a distinct hop flavor, which we'll get into a little bit later. Another differentiator between the California Common and other beers is the style in which you ferment and use the yeast. So you may have heard of the Anchor Steam beer. Anchor Steam is probably the most popular California Common, and it's not called a steam beer because you use steam to brew it. It's called a steam beer because of the technique with the yeast. So there are two types of yeast most people know. There's ale yeast. Ale yeast is a top fermenting yeast. It ferments at a higher temperature. So you're looking at anywhere between 64 degrees Fahrenheit all the way up to, some Saison yeast go up to 90, but most ales are brewed between that 62, 64, and about 70 to 72 degree range. Now, a lager yeast, which is a cold fermenting yeast, or in the brewing world they call it a bottom fermenter, is fermented on the cooler side. So you're looking at the 45 degree Fahrenheit up to around 50 to 55 degrees Fahrenheit, in that range as a fermentation. Now, that's a lot cooler than ale temps. If you had an ale and you tried to ferment it at 50 degrees, you wouldn't get anything because that yeast is going to go dormant and go to sleep. So a steam beer is brewed by taking a lager yeast or a cold fermenting yeast and fermenting it up at ale temperatures. Now when you do that, you do get more fruity notes that come out of a lager yeast that are usually not present, because in a lager is usually known as a crisp, clean beer. But that fruity, the fruity notes that you're going to get from that warmer fermentation of that lager yeast is going to add flavor that is distinctive to the style of a California Common. So what does the grain bill look like for our California Common? So as I stated before, this beer is a maltier beer, and it has those notes of toast and grain and caramel. So we're going to start with 9.5 pounds of Marris Otter. Now Marris Otter is a European malt, and it's got that backbone of toastiness to it that you don't get from Breeze 2-row. So I'm going to use 9.5 pounds of that. Then I'm going to come back with 3/4 pound of caramel 40, and that's going to give us some color, and it's also going to give us some of those caramel notes. And then I'm going to come back with a 1/4 pound of caramel 60, make it a little bit darker, add to that malty flavor, and give it that extra backbone of caramel. Now some people will put some darker malts in there, but I think we're going to have enough toast, grain, and caramel coming from that combination of malts in that grain bill to where we're going to have a nice California Common. Now what about the hops? You can't make a classic California Common without Northern Brewer hops. So those Northern Brewer hops are going to give you a huge punch of woody flavor, and that woody flavor and bitterness and aromas are really key to nailing this style. So at 60 minutes, we're going to add 0.8 ounces of Northern Brewer hops to the boil. Then we're going to add another ½ ounce of Northern Brewer hops at about 15 minutes. We're going to come back in at 10 minutes with a ½ ounce of cluster hops, and then we're going to finish it off at 5 minutes or so with about 3/4 of an ounce of Willamette. And that's really going to give us all the earthy bitterness that we need to really nail this beer. So now that our mash and boil has got our strike water to the perfect temp, we're going to go ahead and mash in. And as always, you cannot have a brew day without your helpers. Say hi.
Hello.
So yeah, they're going to be helping me out today, and I will be drinking my nice Saison, my spring Saison. It has cleared up rather nicely. And what are you drinking?
Root beer.
Yeah, some nice homemade root beer. So yeah, let's mash in. And if you want to take a stab at brewing your own California Common, make sure you hit up my friends at Atlantic Brew Supply. If you hit them up online, they'll have this recipe. They will also have their Raleigh Brewing Company California Common recipe as well. So feel free to try either of those and take a stab at this beer style. So to make sure that my brew day is going on track, usually after the mash, what I'll take is a pre-boil gravity. To take a pre-boil gravity, I use a refractometer. With my refractometer, I just take a sample, pour it over it, and you look through it and it refracts the light to tell you the specific gravity of your wort. So pretty much when I do that, I just want to make sure that I'm on track to hit my final gravity. And it'll allow me to figure out, kind of adjustments that I need to make on the fly if something goes wrong. Alright, so our brew day is over. I've already chilled down and I got my sample on my refractometer here. And let's see, I am at 1057, which is 2 points higher than I'm supposed to be. But hey, I'll take it. It's not that bad. But we're ready to rock. I got my Clarity Firm, and we're using WLP 810 San Francisco lager yeast as our yeast strain. And I checked I didn't check. My man Todd at Atlantic Brew Supply checked the viability on these, and the viability was pretty low. So usually, with a lager, it takes a lot of yeast. With an ale, it takes a little bit less yeast than a lager. But I would have usually used 1 pack of these for a beer that's around that 1050 mark. But these have a little bit older of a date, not crazy old, but just the viability is a little bit down. So instead of making a starter, I ended up just getting 2 packs. So I got 2 packs of San Francisco lager yeast. I'm gonna pitch into this to ferment, and we're gonna be good to go. Got my Clarity Firm. I'm all set. So join me back in about 2 weeks, maybe less, to taste it. And I may even have some friends over to try it. So hope you enjoyed the brew day. Until next time, keep mashing.